Hello, everybody from all around the world. It's Craig and Richard here for the first of the 4 feedback videos. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Pretty good, Craig. Just surviving another lockdown here in Melbourne. So my thoughts go out to everybody else around the world who might be in lockdown themselves.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's so great to be connected with so many people from all around the world in this run of Mindfulness for Wellbeing and Peak Performance. Lots of interesting things coming up this week to explore.
Yeah, lots on default mode, Craig. That really resonated with a lot of our learners.
Yeah. And questions like, will my mind wander less after having practiced for months and years?
Well, your mind wanders about every 2 or 3 years still, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had a moment where my mind wandered. It was, I think, about 2017,
Yeah.
for a couple of seconds. But anyway, it still happens, you know. It's what the mind does. It probably does wander less, but I think we just
Let's
get
just qualify that. That's actually not true. Craig's mind wanders all the time. So does mine. But we catch it quicker. I think that's the key, isn't it? That we notice a bit faster and spend less time lost in the mind wandering.
That's right. So the mind wanders a bit less, but you notice it more quickly, and therefore more able to choose whether you want to keep going down those rabbit holes that the mind wants to go down.
Yeah.
And there's questions as well about having, gotten lost in default thinking for so many years, and in a way the brain kind of wires itself for that to an extent, and the attention circuits haven't gotten much exercise.
Because we've been kind of rehearsing it, basically practicing it for so long.
Yeah, and I think one of the really unhelpful things is that when we notice the mind wandering is to get caught in another sort of form of mind wandering, which is an internal dialogue with ourselves about what's wrong with me. Why does my mind keep wandering, rather than just noticing? I think one of the most useful things is just to kind of learn to lose interest in what the mind's wandering to when we notice it. It's just like, just losing interest in being away, without even realizing it. So if we lose interest in it, then it makes it easy to unhook and just re-engage with where we are and what we're doing.
Yeah. So just not being so interested in all the stuff that's going through the mind anymore, perhaps being a bit more interested in the breath or what's happening in the present.
Yeah, get interested in our life.
Our life, is the way to put it.
And that can include in the kind of way that a child is interested, that walking, down the street and a child's noticing things and, and flowers and colors and all sorts of things. The world's an interesting place to a child, but we kind of lose interest over time, and we get interested in just ruminating and worrying and all the stuff that the mind does. So if we could just flip that around, it makes it a lot easier, but certainly not getting caught in the default thinking about what's wrong with me. Why do I keep thinking about all this stuff?
Default thinking about default thinking, Craig. That sounds like hell.
It does. It's a very deep rabbit hole, that one.
Yeah. And if we flip that coin over, Craig, a lot of our learners have started to notice that when they're not in that default mode, well, first of all, that it's quite nice. Yeah. But they've also, some of them were starting to describe some kind of, what they call profound experiences, like sort of being moments being free from anxiety and fear and emotions like anger. And for some, that was a really kind of a new experience and one that generated a lot of discussion in the forums this week. And some sort of, that if they really relax their visual focus, they get into this almost kind of altered state of consciousness. And I think that's a really interesting, there's a few important things to say about that. First of all, that's very normal. We're so used to being in that very contracted, limited default mode that when we step out of that, sometimes that's quite a profound experience just to be, be in the present moment, not be caught up in all of that stuff. And that can be really, that can be a really wonderful experience for some people. It's not, of course, the goal of mindfulness practice. It's not like we're trying to achieve a certain state or some altered state of consciousness. It's actually not the point at all. If things like this happen, the whole point is just to notice and just they're another experience that we're noticing and we're having. And really, we should just come back to that sense of presence and back to the practice.
Yes, because it can be, a lot of pressure trying to have an experience, trying to get into an experience.
Well, then we start chasing it, don't we? We sit down and meditate. We think, okay, come on, experience, when am I going to? And of course, then we're the mind isn't being with what's happening. We're somehow in the future looking for something, evaluating what's happening now.
Yeah, that's right. And the paradox is that when we stop thinking, worrying, ruminating, and all the rest of it, and just be, very often this sort of state, it's not like another state. It's like coming back to a natural state. It's like many people, how can I think my way into having that experience, rather than we just stop thinking our way out of it.
Yes.
So that sense of deep peace or contentment, all these kinds of things, it's not actually a matter of chasing it or getting it or anything else. We might just, if we just stop and just be for a few minutes, it's like, oh, there it is. But it can also be a bit of a scary thing sometimes. It's like being in a prison cell, like in our own heads for a long, long time, and all of a sudden the prison cell door opens, we step out into a bigger space. We kind of want to retreat back into the...
People have all kinds of unusual experiences. I mean, some people find this really anxiety provoking. You know, we read about this now in the adverse events literature, sometimes to kind of step out of that usual way of being and get in touch with this different sort of mode of operating. It's like, oh, can be quite challenging. And the whole point is, it's just what's happening. Just stay with it. This is the practice. Just don't get caught up in evaluation about, oh, this is really good, I've got to chase that. This is really bad, I've got to stop that happening. It's like, that's just what's happening.
Yeah, just sort of letting it go, as it were, while we just watch those changing states. But, it's another question's come up too about forward planning and forward thinking and...
Oh, you should never do that, obviously, if you're practicing mindfulness. You should never have thoughts of the future or the past ever again, right?
Yeah, well, and I think there's a subtle thing between being grounded in the present moment, here and now, planning and preparing for the future. But we're grounded in the moment, and we're getting our attention on something that needs to be planned and prepared, etc. But it is a very fine line between that and worry about the future.
Or catastrophizing or over planning or all of that kind of reactive stuff.
Yeah, and worry is a really great impersonator. It likes to impersonate things. It likes to pretend to be planning and preparation when it's actually just worry. Be useful. And I think a couple of the giveaways is when a person's really in the moment planning and preparing, then the person feels productive, the mind's working efficiently, it's, doing what it needs to do.
And relatively relaxed, wouldn't you say? It's not like there's not a lot of stress happening in the body, not a lot of fight and flight.
In fact, quite the opposite. A person feels good, feels useful, and the attention's being directed where it needs to be at that moment. So some of the giveaways when we're not planning and preparing, we're actually just worried, pretending to be planning and preparing, is we will notice that the stress response will be activated. There'll be a kind of a sense of pressure. And we've lost our groundedness in the present moment, and the mind's starting to catastrophize. Oh, what if this and what if that? Which is different to consider this contingency, need to put that in place, but the mind's wandering, and there'll be all of a sudden these little mental movies of things going wrong and everything else. So the stress response, we will feel less productive. We get distracted. And
a really great distinction. So this is really how to know the difference between, productive planning and thinking and problem solving and worrying and catastrophizing.
Yeah, and if we notice that we're wandering into the other, then there it is again. That's right. Just come back, just center ourselves. Yeah. Okay, just attention back on task. Yes. And if we get better at noticing that, then we can save ourselves a lot of time and certainly a lot of stress. And be more productive at the same time. Yeah,
and on a related topic, a lot of our learners were really resonating with the stress performance curves and the mindfulness performance curve as well, and asking, obviously, we don't want to move too far into that distress zone. So, mindfulness can sort of help us detect when we've got the right amount of stress. And it can. I mean, we can become more and more aware of how much stress we're experiencing through those symptoms of fight and flight that you were just describing. And, if we're going too far and we're starting to feel very stressed, maybe we want to just, come back to the present moment, do some meditation, go for a walk outside. But there is the possibility, of course, of stepping out of that whole way of doing things, because instead of relying on stress to motivate us, mindfulness opens up the possibility of relying on, following our goals and our passions and focusing on what's important in any given moment. And that can be highly motivating. We really don't need stress and negative emotions to motivate us. If we're clear on what is important and we're able to focus our attention on that and stay focused on that, then we can start to find that we even kind of get into flow states doing things very productively, but without any of the stress.
Yeah, and it's interesting to reflect if we on times when we've performed at our peak, and so on, that we won't be using stress. Stress is not a part of the thing, but complete engagement, completely being in the moment with what we're doing. And so the performance comes with that, but the enjoyment comes with it as well. But certainly if we're in a total state of apathy and the pressure of the looming deadline comes along, well, the stress is a good motivator. But it will only serve us so far. And many people assume, and the classic early work on the Yerkes-Dodson, stress performance kind of curve, assumes that stress is the only motivator. And that's a really unfortunate thing. Many students, many people in the workplace are assuming you have to have stress. And it used to, I can remember at school, everybody assumes you've got to be stressed and then lead up to exams and all that kind of thing. And it's a kind of mentality that people very commonly take on and never actually question. I certainly questioned it when I was young and realized, wait a sec, I don't have to use stress. I can just, and it doesn't have to be stressful doing an exam, but we have to think outside the box a little bit and not take on the assumptions that everybody takes on. And the principles are simple, but as many of our learners noticed, it's not easy. It does require some awareness and practice.
Yeah, and we've got another week of practice coming up.
We certainly have. So it's been a great start so far. We'll look forward to being with everybody next week. And just to remember as well that if you're finding these resources valuable and so on, please do remember that there is an upgrade that everybody can do, and that is to have permanent access to all the materials and everything else. Which
come back to them anytime you want.
That's right. So it could be a really good investment for those who are interested to do that. Anyway, we'll look forward to being with everybody next week. So have a very mindful week.
See you then.